This is the Monogram demonstration. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to open Chrome or any other browser that you want to open, like Firefox or Opera. And let's open that up. At the top here, I'd like for us to enter our PVCC homepage, pvcc.edu. And once we reach our homepage, I'd like for us to go to our right side here and open our My PVCC. Now I'd like for you to hit in your login username. And if you don't know your username, usually it's the first half of your VCCS email. And if you don't know your password, you might need your Impl ID. But I know my password, so I'm going to enter it here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Canvas. We're going to open that up. And once we're in Canvas, I'd like for us to go to our Typography 1 class and open that up. Once we're in our Typography 1 class, I'd like for us to go to our Thursday class, and I'd like for us to open our Monogram Demo. You'll see the lecture appear right here. Below, you'll have the example PDF. I'd like for us to download that PDF. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to right-click, or control-click if you're on a Mac, and we're going to save link as. This will make it easier as a workspace. Once we have that on the desktop, I'd like for us to go back, and I'd like for us to get our fonts. Now, if you're on a Mac, you can download the Mac folder, and these will be the fonts that we're using during this semester. You can, again, right-click or control-click if you're on a Mac, and we're going to save link as. We're going to save it to our desktop. And once that's on our desktop, we're going to unzip it. You can double-click on it just to unzip it, or if you're on a PC, you might have to right-click. And this should be our folder with all of our fonts. Now, if you inspect this, you'll see that we're using the fonts for this particular project, Adobe Garamond and Gill Sans. And the easiest way to get these onto your Mac, if you have a Mac, is by opening FontBook. Now, I have FontBook in my toolbar here, or my dock. If you don't have it in your dock, and I'm going to pull it out of my dock, you can go to Applications, and you can get FontBook in your Applications. And I'm going to drag FontBook to my dock so that I have it available, and you can just double-click on it to open it. What I'd like for you to do here is reopen your Mac Fonts folder. And if you have a Mac, all you have to do is drag and drop these files into your FontBook. And you can see the add sign. And I don't want to add it to Atoms, I just wanted to add it to General. And it should add Adobe Garamond, and it just added it right there. Now you're going to also add Gill Sans, but as you can see, I already have Gill Sans in here, right here. And I'm going to X out of this. Now, if you're on a PC, all you have to do is open the folder and then right-click and install font here. You should have an Install Font tab. All right. So once we're done with these, I'd like for you to see another way we can install fonts from Adobe. Now, I have a video here telling you how to install the fonts. And I also have a link right here that shows you where you can install the fonts. So let's click on that together. Once I'm in this, I can type in the fonts that we're going to be using for this project. For example, let's do Adobe Garamond. And we can see it pops up. And once it pops up, we can click on the typeface. And we go up to the top here to activate the 6 fonts. This would be the whole family. If we could scroll down, you'll see the whole family. And I think it's best to have the whole family. And you have to make sure you are signed in first off, so they might ask you to sign in, but I'm already signed in, so I can go OK and approve it. And so this activates the fonts in my Adobe Illustrator and Adobe InDesign. Now if we go to Gill Sans, let's type in Gill Sans. And they have something called Gill Sans Nova, which is fine. It's very close to our Gill Sans. If we go to inspect the typeface below, you'll see that we have Gill Sans Book, and that's the typeface that we'll be using for this project. You can just activate that font, or you can activate the whole family, which you can activate it right there. And I'm going to activate it, and I go OK. All right, after we're done with that, what I'd like for us to do is X out of our windows here, and we don't have to come back to our canvas. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Illustrator. So one thing that we're going to do when we go down to open Illustrator before we open it in our dock or in our applications, I want us to hit Command Option Control Shift if you're on a Mac. And if you're on a PC, you can do this by hitting Control Alt Shift. All right, and we're going to open it. And just keep holding it down while you're opening it. And it should delete all of your preferences. And it might take a second for Adobe Illustrator to start up. Now that Illustrator is open, let's go to open a new file together. We're going to generate a new file, and we're going to go to Print here at the top. And we're going to change this to inches. And we're going to set it at 6 by 6 inches. Except we're going to have 3 artboards. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to hit Create. The next step we're going to do is we're going to go to Window, and we're going to set up our workspace as typography down here at the bottom. And once we have that, we can also, I like to have my toolbar set up in a long toolbar. You can just toggle that back and forth. I'd like for us to go to our Preferences, which is under Illustrator right here. And we're going to scroll down and we're going to adjust something under Type. Now, if you're on a PC, it will be found under Edit, and it will be down at the bottom somewhere here. But for us Mac users, it's found under Preferences and Type. The one thing I want us to unclick here is Fill New Type Objects with Placeholder Text. We don't need placeholder text because we're just using individual letters for our monogram. Placeholder text is wonderful if you're using paragraph alignment or placeholder text, just so you can see how a typeface looks while you're working. So we're going to unclick that and we're going to hit OK. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my artboards. Now we can adjust our artboards here, and we can see that we have the 3 artboards. And we're going to use our Adjust Artboard tool. And I'm going to click on my second one, and I'm going to grab my artboard tool here. And I'm going to change it to 3 by 3 inches, because that is the specifications for our final monogram project. And I'm going to set it here, much like the example that I show in the example PDF. So we can click this link tool, which will allow us to constrain the proportions on both sides instead of hitting them individually in each box. So I can hit 3 here, and as you can see here, it will drop it down to the 3 by 3 inch box. So now that we have our document set up, I'd like for us to start laying out our monogram exercise. So before we get working further on this project, I'd like for us to open our example PDF. Now there are 2 ways we can do that. We can drag and drop it into our icon, which will open it up. Or if I unclick that, we can go to File here and go Open, and we can open the PDF, and it will open it up in a new window. So we can inspect what we are working on. Now you can see that we are using Gill Sans and Garamond, Adobe Garamond. And these are the example of the experiments on the left side, and on the right side in our 3 by 3 boxes, we are going to place our final versions, or the most desired versions of each, the serif and the sans serif. So let's go back to our artboards and let's start working. So first off, we're going to grab our type tool here, and we are going to click into open space, and we're going to use our initials to start drafting out our experiments. For example, my initials are J and T. I'm going to use J here. Now to deselect, we can either grab our arrow and deselect an open space, we can deselect here, or we can hit Command-Shift-A, which is my preferred way of making a new letter. So I can hit T here. And if I hit Command-Shift-A, I can keep making my J's and my T's. So now I have my uppercase and lowercase. I'm recommending the students to do these at 72 points. So I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to change my point size to 72 up at the top toolbar. So these are my letter forms, my lowercase and uppercase. Now, you can see they're in the default type. They're in Myriad Pro. I want to change these to Gill Sans and Garamond. So I'm going to highlight them, drag a marquee out around all the text. And then what we're going to do is we're going to change it to our Adobe Garamond. Should be under G. Adobe Garamond. Now, you can also just type it in. So you can hit Adobe Garamond. All right. So now that we have our type here, I'm going to select again all of this by dragging out a marquee around. You click and drag out a marquee around all of my type. Now to duplicate it, you guys might have used copy and paste in the past. We can use copy and paste, Command C, Command V, and I'll do that one time so you can see how that works. Command C, Command V, and now I have my duplicated version. Another easy way to do this, on our Mac here, you can use Option and you can duplicate your type. So I have a few versions here now that I can experiment with. And I'm going to drag out a few more to work on my sans serif version, which will be Gill Sans. And I'm going to select all those out over here. All right, I think I have enough. So again, I'm going to drag a marquee around all of the type over here. I'm going to change it to Gill Sans. Gill Sans. And now we can start experimenting with our type. Now, when we start experimenting, I'm going to zoom in, and you can use your space bar to kind of narrow us in here. And what we're going to do is start aligning these. I want us to inspect the geometry, how they may lay out. Now, some people like these snap tools that are on Illustrator, specifically on the typography setting. Which is great if you're working on layout. For our cases, we're making a kind of a logo, a monogram. So what I like to do is I go to View, I take off my Smart Guides, and I take off my Snap to Point. Both of those will give us more freedom of how to use these as we grab them or select them. So I'm going to make some different versions. Now I like to use my ruler tool, and the ruler tool will allow us to grab out guides. So there are two ways we can find our rulers. You can either hit Command R, which will add our rulers to the top, and you can hit Command R to turn them off again, or you can go to View and go to Rulers here and show rulers. So those are the two ways we can do that. Then I like to use my guides. You can just click and drag out from either side, and we can create little guides that will allow us to align things. You guys seeing that? And then we can kind of continue with our experiments. So I'm going to kind of mess with some of the geometry here. There we go. I might rotate something, and I use my Shift key if I need to get it to snap to a perfect angle there. And I'm just going to make a kind of bland one here. It just connects right there. Now I'm going to continue to work on my lowercase in my serif font, Adobe Garamond. I like how that serif on the T kind of hooks into that point on the J. And we can kind of continue to mess with these, and I might line up the serif on this one. I think that kind of makes a little neat addition. I might rotate something here. Shift key. Maybe I'll do something a little more unusual. You know, these are all just experiments. Maybe yeah, something like that. You know, it doesn't have to be legible. You guys can just have fun. And I'm going to keep going with my experiments. So let's do one more. All right, so now to do our sans serif, I like to use the angularity and the stroke or the thickness of the mark to kind of dictate where things are placed. All right, so these are my experiments. And when we're done with our experiments, what I'd like for us to do is put the type at the bottom. And we're going to make it 10-point type. So go to the top and type in 10-point type. And I'm going to do it in Adobe Garamond. But instead of using Adobe Garamond regular, I'm going to use italic. And then I'm going to type in, with a bracket mark, Monogram experiments. And that way I kind of know what this is. And then I'm going to put my final versions here. I believe in the final version I said that these should be about 130 points for your final. The best ones that I'm going to choose today are this one at the top for my Gill Sans. And to duplicate it, we can either hit copy and paste, or we can use our option. And there are two ways you can do this. You can hold your shift key and drag out until you get 130 points. And you can see I'm at 106 there, and I could drag it out. And I'm at 124 and keep going until I'm about 130. And then, shave off the rest. Either that, or we can take the type, and I'm going to duplicate it here so you guys can see, and drag it over, and then we change the 130. Now you can see that it's going to distort its placement. So you might have to adjust where the letter form is placed. And that is that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center these. Now again, you can use your ruler tool to create a center. And I can do the same thing for this. So we generally have a center point. And once we're in position, then we can label it Monogram and Gill Sans. So I'm going to copy my Monogram experiments here. I'm going to do a copy and paste this time, Command-C and Command-V. Now if you're on a PC, it's Control, Command-C. It's Control-C, Control-V. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to change this to 8 points. So one thing I want to do here is to pull off my guides as I'm selecting something, is I can hit Command semicolon, and that will take my guides off. So that way I can select information and move them over. Now again, I want to take these and make these 130 points. So I'm going to hold my shift key down and make them. So I'm at 124, and you can kind of see your points up here. I've made it too large, and I'm going to set it at 130. And go there. All right, so once those are set, I'm going to center these, and you can put your command semicolon back, and we can center them as best as possible. And I think that's going to look pretty good. Maybe go up a little bit. And again, we're going to do this one in Garamond. So we're going to duplicate our Gill Sans Monogram tag here. I'm going to hit my Command-C, Command-V. I'm going to drag that over to here. But for the case of this, I want to change it to Garamond. And in this case, it was Adobe Garamond. So I'm going to do Adobe Garamond. And get my arrow and place it in this bottom right-hand corner. And I'm going to adjust this as well. All right, so this is our Monogram exercise finished. What I'd like for each student to do at the end here is save it as a PDF. If you've never saved a file in Illustrator as a PDF, you've saved it only as an AI, we're going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to save it to my desktop and label it Monogram and my initials JD. And then change it to PDF. And we are going to save it to our desktop. Save PDF. And we can upload this to Canvas. I'm going to double click on it to preview it. So these are my experiments, and this is my Gil Sans monogram, and this is my Adobe Guerra monogram. All right, thanks guys.